It was the march seen around the world. In May 2004, nearly 4,000 people came out to march against drugs in the small town of Manchester, Kentucky. The pastors repented to God and their communities for allowing the darkness to settle in. The drug dealers were put on notice: get saved or get busted. They'd had enough. Over the next 12 months, they saw dramatic change in their town. Drug arrests went way up. Drug dealers and users started coming to church and getting free from their addictions. And the story of Manchester was seen around the world on the 700 Club.
About 2 hours after the story of Manchester aired the first time live, we started getting telephone calls.
Pastor Doug Abner of Community Church in Manchester keeps track of all the states that have contacted him. 33 so far, and hundreds of towns.
Not only did we hear from people in the United States, but we got emails from New Zealand and from France and from Wales and England and British Columbia. I mean, just mind-boggling.
Nearly every request was the same. Help us do in our town what you did in Manchester.
We were blown away because we knew we had a serious methamphetamine problem. And we saw that video, we got hope that somebody might have an answer about how to attack it.
Pastor Mike England of Blue Ridge, Georgia, showed the 700 Club story to his church.
I didn't even get to preach because the floor of the church was littered with people just weeping and weeping over our community after seeing that video. And I wasn't going to touch that. I mean, that's a holy thing.
After a surprise visit to Manchester, he and his wife just showed up on Pastor Abner's doorstep. The Englands headed back to Georgia, where they helped organize the first ever march against meth.
We are through allowing methamphetamines from destroying our county.
In August, some 3,000 residents of Fannin County, Georgia, took to the streets. The local news covered the event.
Marchers held their signs high, proclaiming their message: everyone unite, God in, drugs out.
In Longview, Texas, a similar story of desperation. Shannon Smallwood's family was almost ready to give up after struggling for years with a family member hooked on crack cocaine.
I just flipped on the TV and the 700 Club was on, and I saw a community marching about concerning drug abuse in their community and what God did, and pretty much I said, God, would you do that in our community?
Shannon's prayer was answered. In May, hundreds of residents in Longview, Texas donned red T-shirts in what they called the Big March. Their theme, "The battle is the Lord's," taken from 2 Chronicles chapter 20.
Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle is not yours, but God's. Tomorrow, march down against them.
And in Oceana, West Virginia, sometimes referred to as Oxyana because of the drug problem associated with the painkiller Oxycontin, they held 2 marches after hearing about what God did in Manchester.
We had over 550 people march, and it was awesome. The word tells me that God is no respecter of persons, and if he can do that in Manchester, Kentucky, he can do that in Oceana, West Virginia.
Nobody could have imagined that so many towns, so many lives would be inspired, even changed by a single story, and that God could use a small town like Manchester, Kentucky, once so hopeless when it came to its own drug problem, to now give hope to so many who need it.
This is about hope, and what I saw on the TV that day gave me hope.
I believe that I would never be anything more than the hopeless junkie that I had been for so long. You know, and God spoke to me. He said, you know what? While you were yet still in your sins, Christ died for you.
You cannot underestimate the value of hope, in the community. Churches are letting down the walls and starting to really seriously work together. The government agencies and the churches in our community are working together for the first time ever. I mean, that's never happened.
Not only that, but Pastor England says since the march, calls to the county's drug tip hotline are up 10%. A good indicator, he says, of things to come. And in Manchester, 2.5 years after the march, the area once known as the painkiller capital of the nation is now seeing a dramatic dip in the number of painkillers prescribed by doctors. And what's more,
we've been told by drug dealers that have now been set free by Jesus that if they were still dealing drugs, they wouldn't even stop in our town and buy gas because the climate has changed so much.
Pastor Abner says he's grateful for how God used the 700 Club to share their story.
The 700 Club totally changed our lives in that every day we do things, get to do things in the kingdom because people saw that.